And I want to see them all and tell them because that's not long, is it?
Welcome to a brand new podcast. Iain Maclean is a writer and the author of TJS War. David Blair is an actor and the narrator of the audiobook TJS War. David and Iain have been listening to their readers and listeners and have decided to turn TJ's War into a movie. And since the story covers the entirety of World War II, the movie will cost at least $50 million. Will David and Iain succeed in their quest? Follow them in this podcast series. We're going to make a $50 million movie.
Hello, and welcome to what may well be the best episode of this podcast that we've put out to date. Now, a lot of people have said to me over the last 6 months, yeah, we get the title for this podcast, but you need a good story behind it, right? And we agree. And we have one. Our issue is that in getting people to listen to our pitch, they really need to have read the book or listened to the audiobook first. And in the words of our executive producer when we first approached him, it's 72 effing chapters long. Difficult to box this story. It's a war story, it's an anti-war story, and it's a love story. It's also a true story, told as a novel. And until you get into it, that's a hard sell. Now, to pull people like you out there who just can't quite bring yourselves to pick up this book or listen to the 23.5 hour long audio version, we've created a read-through from some of the book. A bit more than a read-through, our own Mark Reid, host of the Zen Sandwich podcast, narrates. And then we have the acting talents of David Blair, who did such a fantastic job with the audiobook. And then I'm delighted to say the wonderful Lisa Shingler has joined us, fresh from Coronation Street, who in the case of the scene you're about to watch, brought Rose to life. Look out for the tears amongst a few of us around the 20-minute mark. I play all the other parts. Thankfully there weren't many, and please remember, I'm a writer, not an actor. I'm definitely not an actor. So please enjoy Chapter 14 of TJ's War, Can Love Survive When the World is on Fire? And please spread the word and share the hell out of this podcast. Thank you.
First-class carriage on the Flying Scotsman was sparsely populated. Two men in dark suits sat across from each other near the front of the carriage. Lawyers, TJ decided, their heads bobbing as they read through reams of paperwork. An elderly woman in a black dress and purple velvet hat sat with her back to the engine, sleeping most of the time, but occasionally waking to adjust her position. On leaving London, the only other passenger was a woman 2 rows in front of TJ, who had her back to him. Wavy, short-cut brunette hair left a pale, elegant neck fully exposed over a dark brown, combed wool jacket with padded shoulders. The woman never slouched, never dropped her head. She sat upright, sometimes to the front, sometimes turning to look out the window, at which point TJ tried to build a picture of her face. Cold white skin drawn over a delicate jaw, lips still full, a straight nose as far as he could tell, partially hidden by high cheekbone. Her eyelash slowly, deliberately moving down and up. TJ thought, she is struggling to keep her eyes open, and yet her posture is magnificent. It would take 7 hours for the train to reach Edinburgh, assuming the Germans didn't decide to bomb it. TJ had been looking forward to sleeping in his seat, but the upright woman's presence was affecting him. He followed the line of her ear, a perfect ear. He thought it nestled in her waves of dark brown, shiny hair, the unblemished skin of her neck fading from view beneath the increased foliage like snow at the edge of a forest. Occasionally, she would raise a fine silk-covered hand from the table to touch some part of her head, using only the tips of her fingers, letting them dance like dragonflies across her skin. The train was picking up speed now. London suburbs behind them, the flatlands of Peterborough and Lincolnshire calling.
Tickets, please.
The guard was a large, ruddy, mustached man, round-shouldered, his belly pulling his trousers against his ankles. TJ sprang up, grasped the guard by the arm, gave him a conspiratorial look, and led him back out of the carriage. He only had a second-class ticket, and while that would have been a problem for John, TJ had been trained to lie, become the story. The MI6 man showed the conductor his ID amid the wind battering all around them, and whispered loudly into the guard's ear.
Military intelligence. We're following a line of inquiry. Can I leave it at that?
The guard's face was blank. Finally, he raised his fat finger to near his nose.
Understood, sir. Do you need assistance? I can get a message for police to meet the train at Darlington.
No. We have to keep mum.
Nodding at the wisp of a woman in front of him.
We think she is going to meet the rest of her network. Mustn't scare them off, eh?
The guard understood immediately, and then thought of something closer to home.
Do you think it's safe for me to go in there, sir?
You're quite safe. From my seat, I have the entire carriage covered. Anyone makes a wrong move, and I will take them out before they can get anywhere near you.
TJ patted his jacket pocket. The conductor looked down to TJ's hand and then nodded his support. TJ followed the guard back into the carriage, taking his seat as the young woman reached into her handbag. She dug out a ticket and handed it to the guard, who was immediately horrified.
I'm sorry, madam. This is a second-class ticket. You will...
TJ could see him thinking.
Pardon, monsieur. Je parle pas anglais?
At a loss, the guard put out his hand.
Just 1 minute, miss.
And with that, he made his way back towards TJ, signaling that they should again meet outside the carriage.
What do I do? Her ticket is for a second-class carriage, and she's foreign. Of course she is foreign.
The guard suddenly realized that she wouldn't be an enemy spy if she was British. TJ was thinking that this was turning out better than he expected.
Just go back in there and give her back her ticket as if nothing has happened. Everything is fine. Stay relaxed, okay?
The guard's ruddy complexion was now scarlet.
Sorry, sir. Just a bit of a shock, that's all. I'll do my best.
TJ gripped his upper arm, a friendly smile.
You're doing fine.
The guard turned and strode back into the carriage to give the young woman back her ticket. In receiving the ticket, she realized that the guard was checking with a man behind her, just the odd move of his eyes giving the game away. The guard moved off. She was confused. Why wasn't she moved to the second-class carriage, or indeed being escorted off the train? The guard checked the other tickets and came quickly back down the carriage, looking at the floor as he passed the young woman. Then he nodded to TJ. He had played his part. Leaving his seat, TJ went up to the young woman's table. Without any preamble, he sat down opposite her and saw her face properly for the first time. Brown eyes and worn sockets. Before getting on the train, she had been crying for a very long time. A beautiful, delicate, lost face, white as milk, whether through style, hunger, or fear, TJ wasn't sure. Then he looked at her shivering hands, and then he knew. He smiled. That always did the job.
Easy, lass. You're okay now.
She looked into his eyes, wanting to believe him.
My name is John. Hello.
Pardon, monsieur?
Je parle pas anglais?
Finished John.
Yes, I know. So which part of France are you from? Princes Street or Costophon Road?
She was going to cry again.
If you're wondering why you're still in first class, well, that's down to me. So please, just tell me your name.
The woman calmed a little. John waited. Finally, she said,
It's Rose.
Hello, Rose.
And he smiled again, looking straight into her eyes. She looked at the table, her hands tightly clasped in front of her.
I'm sorry about breaking the law.
Then she looked up at him, resigned now.
I've never done anything like this before in my life.
It's okay. I'm not a policeman, and nobody is coming near you. Is he on the train?
Who?
Whoever you're running from.
Rose looked straight back at him, but didn't speak for many seconds. Finally, with almost a smile,
I'm not sure. If not, then he's waiting for me at my destination.
Then don't go there.
Rose smiled for the first time in John's short experience of her, but he felt it might have been the first time in a while.
What does John do?
I fight for people to be free. I'm taking a holiday.
Rose doubted that.
Well, where is your uniform?
I'm wearing it.
She looked at him, and then almost so that no one would notice, tilted her head. Rose was going to ask another question, but John raised the flat of his hand.
My turn. What do you do?
She closed her mouth, then looked out of the window. Fields of cows, flat, trodden grass, empty trees, silhouetted hedgerows, and fallen leaves flashed past. November can be very gray.
I am in medicine. I'm helping the fight to find a cure for cancer.
He would have said she was too young to be a doctor, but it is often difficult to tell a woman's age.
Doctors are very clever people.
Yes, that's true.
Do you have a favourite?
Doctor,
No. Cancer. Do you have one that you focus on more than any others?
Rose stopped smiling. She bit her lip, her mouth tightened, the blacks of her eyes narrowed slightly.
a favourite cancer.
John was backtracking, or at least trying to.
Well, favourite is a poor choice of word, I'm sorry. Perhaps specialism.
But it was all after the fact. TJ watched as a young woman in front of him flushed pink.
Poor choice. Yes. Yes, I would say it's a poor choice. Do you know what happens to someone when they're struck by cancer? A healthy, happy, living person. Someone who has dreams and wants to live. It's all taken away. But not like you, with your bullets and explosions that end life in the blink of an eye.
John was getting his answer ready. He wasn't going to accept this from anyone, especially some snot-nosed junior doctor who had never seen the wrong end of a gun, or probably even heard one
No.
fired.
Cancer is not like that. Cancer tells you it's coming. People feel tired. Things they used to do become impossible. A day comes when the person thinks, I'm always tired. I'm run down. I'll go to the doctor and they'll pep me up.
John could hear her argument was a million miles ahead of her. Wasn't she wonderful being there for them? Yes, she'd done her time at university, and now sick people were coming to her. And who was he, just a little soldier boy? Rose was still going.
But the doctor doesn't pep them up. Doesn't prescribe a potion. Doesn't do anything to make that person feel less tired. The doctor looks at the patient, listens to their symptoms and stays calm. Might think all kinds of things, but remains like a rock, even when the results are back. The rock is there. The cold words come out as if reading the gravestone of someone you don't know. And in those words, the hopes and dreams of a whole human being are destroyed. When will that person stop feeling tired? Only when feeling stops completely. But that's not the worst of it.
John had already thrown his old argument away, his mind racing to an answer that he didn't want.
What's the worst of it?
She was watching the edges of a town the train would not stop at.
The worst of it is leaving that room and staying alive. Everyone asks how long, but no one really knows. It's always a guess. And you see, people love people. They don't want those they love to feel pain, so they don't tell them. They will tell them, but not until near the end. They don't want them suffering. But the patient doesn't know when the end is going to come. They want to say goodbye, but they don't want to say goodbye. And then still be there for days and weeks. It's too much to put onto people you love. Do you see, soldier boy?
Rose was angry. John was back in her eyes. Long moments passed. His voice almost lost.
It's death, isn't it? That's who's waiting for you.
It may have been a bump in the track or just John's words hitting her, the anger gone in an instant, leaving behind the crumbling body of a very frightened young woman. John reached across the table and took her hand.
Oh, Rose. Where are your people? Your family?
He realized her hand beneath the glove was tiny in his, long, bony fingers without strength, without warmth. Rose, whose body was barely holding to life, was such a force of beautiful energy. She watched as John gently held her hand, tears streaming down her face.
Edinburgh. They're in Edinburgh. Crummond. They don't know. They don't know where I am.
John knew to keep quiet.
I came home from the doctor, and my father was at work. Mum died shortly after I was born, so there was only me and my 2 brothers and my dad. The doctor said I had 3 months. But what does that mean? I sat in the empty house and I couldn't tell them. None of them. Not my dad, not my brothers. I couldn't think what to say.
Using his other hand, John gave her the handkerchief from his top pocket.
The wireless was on next door. Terrible things happening in London. German planes bombing every night. Hundreds of people getting killed. I thought I could go like that. Get down to London and get killed. And then Dad would get a letter. And it would be quick. Mum had put some money in an account for each of us, so I had enough to get by. I wrote a note saying that I'd found a job and would write properly soon. And left the house. Left my home. But the Germans never hit me. They were always somewhere else. And now I don't have 3 months. I'm not sure I have 3 days. And I want to see them all and tell them because that's not long, is it?
Tears fell down John's face, holding the hand of his tiny, frightened, braver than lions young woman called Rose.
I wanted to see what first class was like. It's not up to much, is it? I couldn't afford it. But then, as I was walking past, it looked empty. The thought just took me.
John held her hand all the way to Edinburgh's Waverley Station, where they were both due to disembark. Rose to her home, TJ to his next train across to Glasgow. Instead of traveling west, TJ paid a porter to take their bags so that he could help Rose walk to the taxi. She became weaker with each step. He stayed with her until they arrived in the suburb of Craman and the gate to her home. Standing in porch darkness, it took 2 rings of the bell before someone switched on a light. A man in his 40s with white hair opened the door to John.
You don't know me, but I have Rose in the taxi. She's not well and wants to be with you.
Rose!
He staggered past John, rushing to the waiting taxi.
Easy. Take it easy. You need to be very gentle with her.
The man had stopped at the door of the taxi, the gas street lamp shining into the back of the cab.
Rose!
Incredulous, his voice shaking with devastation as he looked on what was left of his beautiful daughter. John placed his hand gently on the man's shoulder.
Let me help you.
He reached in and lifted out Rose as easily as if she was a roll of blankets. The father took her hand, and together they made their way into the house, the taxi driver following Rose's suitcase, which he placed in the hallway. John laid Rose down on the settee. Her father, weak from shock, knelt close to her head. Rose was still there, her eyes shining in thank you. John kissed her hand, then pulled away. There was nothing to be said. Walking back to the taxi, the house seemed to close in behind TJ like a dark fog, at once reclaiming Rose and witnessing her final moments.
To find out more about the book, visit tjswar.com, and to buy it, click on the Amazon link below. To accompany us on our journey, please subscribe to this podcast because we're going to make a $50 million movie.